We call it a bit of a, like if the print product is this, fabulous old frigate ship that's sinking, and when here's the web over here, it's this life raft, and everybody's jumping on that. Our office looks just about like yours. Maybe ours might be a little messier.
We've been cleaning up for 2 days.
Yeah. Really? Yeah. Gotcha. No, but yeah, that's I think how a good newsroom is it's there's no high cubicles. It's very interactive, and we have a great staff. I'm extremely pleased with who I work with. That makes a huge difference because it's so interactive, and everybody's kind of pitch in. There used to be a day when I think in newspapers, even like, for instance, this would be blasphemous. This is sort of my breaking news kit, as I call it. I've got obviously notepad and everything, but I have a camera. I love this lens. I just actually got it not too long ago. I just put a filter on it, and pretty much if I see something that's interesting, I pull it out and boom, I can take a photo of that quickly. And everybody's having to do everything. It used to be, there used to be like union provisions, from what I understand, that you did not, it's kind of like a church and state thing, like if you wrote stories, you did not take pictures, and vice versa. And now we're being asked, as you've got here, to do video and to do, really expand, to basically do everything, and that's kind of how it goes. But I like that, and some people will, and some people won't. Some people, you always kind of have your favorite thing, but I don't mind. Like yesterday, we were out at the scene in Silverdale, and I had the deputy standing there, and I took some B-roll and of the scene and had him talk about what happened, and people want that. Some people don't necessarily want to just read words on a page or on a computer screen. They want as much as you can possibly give them. And what we found is they don't have to be perfect. Like they can just be supplemental. What we think we do best still is the writing, but you can also have you can put some video. If you can find a database of interesting information that would go with your story, the more hyperlinks, the better. Just really trying to become indispensable for the community, but still with that, the idea in mind that writing and just getting the information out there quickly, accurately, and as comprehensively as possible is still our backbone, but that you can do all this other stuff too, and it's fun. Yeah, anyway, I'm just kind of rambling here.
No,
that's good. That's what we wanted to do.
So one reason I thought of you when we were setting up our board that I just recently raised about all the people we want to see is when David Nelson came and talked to one of Mike Prince's classes recently, you came up, and I remember saying that it's like you're 5 people. You're on Facebook, responding to people on the Kitsap Sun's Facebook page. Right. You're on Twitter. Right. You're writing stories. You're blogging, and you seem to be in multiple places all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a certain part of that is dedication, but I'm kind of curious, what kind of tools are you using that help you manage?
Yeah, absolutely. One really helpful way on Twitter was that you can actually, this was a really useful for me, you can actually route your tweets to be texted to you. So like any time I get a mention on Twitter, it will, because quite honestly, how in my job, it's hard to always be in front of a computer screen to keep. Obviously, we're so reliant on these. I need to be able to send stuff through this phone, and so you can turn on a feature on Twitter that will text you anytime you get a mention or anything like that. That's been very helpful. As far as Facebook updates, it's the same kind of thing. I'm on this all the time, and anytime something comes up, I just try to jump on it as quick as I can. Obviously, I've got a good network of people out and about at this point in all of our police departments. I also cover legal affairs and stuff for any trials or anything, and I feel like a pretty good network of attorneys from all stripes. Private defense attorneys, public defenders, prosecutors, and I try to check in with them as much as I can. It's sort of minding the beat, as they say. So there's that. I think that's really helpful. For instance, I have a really good relationship with, he is the public information officer now, but his name is Russ Winger for the State Patrol. And Russ made a point to call me, even though it was at 2 in the morning, to say that we had a state trooper shot and killed. And I'm thankful for that relationship, because that is it's a very tragic story, but it's a very important story for us to tell, and I don't feel like you can tell it as well if you haven't actually been there to feel. But you know, there was a bunch of cops out there that, I mean, these are people that knew Tony Radulescu intimately, and they're working this scene, and you can see that that there's emotion even there, and missing that would have been, I don't think it would, you know, it wouldn't have been as good. So there's no substitute for interacting with people, as much as social media comes into it, but just face to face, putting in the time with your sources, and just trying to you know, remind them what you're looking for, and when something does come up that's not necessarily, you know, a shooting. Obviously, we're going to cover that, but there's always you know, there's always interesting angles for things kind of floating out there that you can look for. One quick example is we have all these judicial elections going on right now. Pretty boring for most people. I mean, I think there's a general understanding what a judge does, but you know, is there a way you can make it more interesting? And I got a tip from someone that two of our Court of Appeals candidates had actually been in front of the state Supreme Court to get together. So they're in front of an appellate court. So, one of them is a long-time prosecutor type of a, you know, just has always worked kind of on that side. The other was a long-time public defender, and I was able to use, there was video of them in front of the state Supreme Court, and I was able to use basically their, the way that they argued to show people, okay, here's who you'd be electing for judge. It was kind of a fun way to do it. But I would have known about that case if someone said, hey, you know. So there really is no substitute for that, I guess. Trying to think of other things. I guess, yeah, just being connected as much as you can. I'm in front of a, you know, if I'm not with this, I'm in front of a laptop. You just, that's just the nature of the beast now. Does that kind of answer your question? Just trying to be as connected as we can. We obviously have multiple Twitter and Facebook accounts. I have a professional Facebook page that I use mostly just for networking and with sources and anybody and everybody who wants to befriend the reporter. I want people to know that there's lots of different ways you can, if you have something for us that you think would be an important story to tell, we don't want to miss it. You know, you can write me through Facebook. You can email me. You can certainly go through Twitter, which again I get instantaneously. So that we want to make sure that if there's a story out there, we're not missing it. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, that's just trying to stay as connected as possible.
As a reporter, how autonomous are you in your work? I mean, how much work are you given as opposed to how much work you have to find for yourself?
I gotcha. There's always going to be, I mean, it's sort of assumed in the newsroom, if it's you know, we have all the different beats. So like Chris Dunnigan, for instance, he's been our longtime environment reporter. So if a whale washes up on a beach and he's working, he's going to go to that. You know, Ed Friedrich is our military and ferries reporter. So if something happens with one of the ferries, if he's there, it's going to happen. If there's a shooting, if something happens, public safety-wise, a big fire, and I'm on, and sometimes when I'm not on, and I hear about it, I'm gonna go to that. And so there's those things, but we are all expected to go and find stories. And as you probably expect, you know, this was more of a calling than a you know, a job to make money. You know, and so. The nice thing about our newsroom is that it is full of people who aren't just showing up at their job each day and going, you know, editor, what do you got for me today? We all are out in the community. In fact, I prefer it that way. I think that journalism is one of those great professions where you do kind of get to be your own boss. Yeah, an editor kind of keeps you on the straight and narrow. We have a fantastic editing staff that makes sense of the junk that I turn into them, and they do a great job. They will get, obviously they get a lot of tips during the day. People call in, and they'll give us stories, and there's going to be times where, you know, we need to go out and do those. But a lot of the times it'll just be like, I'm going to go to court for this shooting suspect this afternoon, and I'll probably talk to a half dozen attorneys that I see there when I when I go to the courthouse, and one of them might say, hey, have you heard about this case? Or hey, did you hear about what the state Supreme Court decided, or things like that. So you just, all the time there are good story ideas to come in. And I guess in this environment, what will happen is if, you know, we're a small enough staff, and we got to put out a daily product every day. It's got to have 5, 6, 7 stories in it. So if you don't go out and actively do that, you kind of get a wide leash that way. If you're able to go out and find interesting stories and just do your job well, they're going to let you go and do your thing. And obviously you got to get approval. I'll call in and say, I'm going to do the story. Is that cool? And yeah, that's fine. But if you don't do that, then you'll start to have somebody who's going, so, you know, what are you doing today? I'm kind of curious about this. You haven't, you came into the office at noon and you're leaving at 2. What's going on? So then they'll start to kind of, you know, you'll be assigned stories and you just have to do them. But we don't have anybody like that. We don't have any. We're really fortunate, I think, that the people that are out in the community for the Sun want to do what they're doing. So they want to find good stories. I don't want to, write boring stories. There is literally too much that's interesting going on, even in a community like Kitsap County. It's not Seattle, obviously. It's not a big metropolitan area, but it's 250,000 people, and we have urban, and we have rural, and we have military, and we have 2 Native American tribes, and we have rich, we have poor, super conservative, super liberal. We've got a little bit of everything here. It actually makes it. I think it's sort of exemplary of, kind of everywhere in the U.S. We have a real hodgepodge here, so, yeah.
We're kind of learning something similar. We're going over to providing daily online content.
Oh, right on, yeah.
And I mean, we're a fairly small school, but yesterday we had, 4 items that we were able to put up.
That's great.
One of them was a standalone photo, but,
yeah.
We also had 3 stories, which
That's awesome.
we kind of were wondering, like,
yeah.
is it even possible to put something out every day here at Olympian College? But
yeah.
there's multiple things every day.
Yeah. That balancing act is a really hard part too. Is knowing that, some of these stories that you put up, and we're doing that too. And in fact, we just had our vice president. The Kitsap Sun's owned by EW Scripps, and they have, I think it's 15 newspapers around the country. We have 2 others on the West Coast. One in Redding, California, this Record Searchlight, and Ventura, the Ventura County Star. And the vice president for all 15 papers came out, and he just talked to us about, expectations, and it's great because it's kind of how we've been doing things, which is that there's really this emphasis on right away, like as soon as you hear about something, get it up on the web, with whatever knowledge you have. Concrete details, we try not to just take things from the scanner. We've seen famous examples now of this, the Gabby Giffords shooting in Arizona. We saw, how that can backfire. There was reporting on that from, I think it was out of Twitter, that she had died, and obviously she hadn't died. So you want to be careful, but you want to get that up as quickly as possible. And oftentimes I'll go through, 3, 4 versions of a story, and then it will run in tomorrow's paper. And it used, the old days, you were sort of compiling your story all day, you had all your notes, and then it went out in the next day's paper. Well, now, I mean, even with this shooting, there was various drafts along the way, and then for the next day's paper, we styled it a little bit differently. Then at about 6 o'clock at night, a final version went up, because it's old news by the next morning. Everybody's already heard about it. And there are, obviously, we still have subscribers, and but we're gonna get the news up online first, and then you sort of build towards that final product. And that's a challenge in and of itself, I think. But it actually can really be a double-edged sword. If you let it kind of, I think in the old days you could let everything just sort of wash over you, and you could have all these jarbled notes and fill up your notepad, and then you're sitting there at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night trying to get your final version, and you're working on your lead and you haven't even written the rest of it. Like that stuff used to happen. But in this day and age, what's nice is that you just have to be more disciplined, but that discipline can really pay off. Because if you're always thinking about it, that you have to, like, okay, there's a shooting in Silverdale, what do we got? We've got, you know, a 45-year-old woman that's been shot, 47-year-old man in custody. I'm organizing it, and I've got my first 3 paragraphs already written in my head. It's online. Boom. Next part. Okay, what do we know? Where's the gun at? You know, that was used in this. You know, was there anybody else involved? Was there all this stuff? You know, next, when you get that next kind of data, I guess, or information coming in, boom, you've got your next draft, and then once all said and done, you kind of take a deep breath and go, okay, now we've got all the information we can possibly get online. Now I'm going to think about this from the 30,000-foot view for people who maybe just do read the print publication, and so what are the really relevant details? And you can just sort of play with what you already have, and try to add a little bit of color or whatever. But so if that makes sense, kind of along the way, you can follow that along, and if you do it right, it actually kind of makes things easier in some ways, I think. But if you get behind, then you're in trouble. So yeah.
How many stories do you work on a typical day?
Well, it kind of depends on obviously what happens. The Mondays tend to be a little unique because obviously one of the things that I've worked hard to do at the Sun is, it used to be in the old days again, like even when I started, we'd go down, the guy I replaced took me to the courthouse, and he said, every week I come down to the courthouse and there's a new case list, and the new case list this is for Superior Court, so it could be, you know, everything from a murder charge to a divorce to someone suing Walmart because they slipped in an aisle. I mean, literally, it's every case, and he'd go through them every Friday, and it was funny. It was printed out. Do you guys even know what a dot matrix printer is? Remember those? So remember there was those printers that had like the little holes on the side, and then you took that stuff off.
And the green and white.
Yeah,
lines.
exactly. They were still in our courthouse, and they've come a long way since then. But in 2005, they were still using dot matrix printers to print this list out, and we'd come in once a week to see this. Well, once a week, my God, you know, there could be a huge story that happened when it was filed by the prosecutor's office. So I've worked real hard to basically. At this point, every felony case, or any case, regardless of what it is, each day I get an email, and it has every case in it. And now they've even gone, I used to have to just request them, and they would send me the documents from the file, but they actually have a database up, and you have to subscribe to it. And so, I mean, instantly, the day after a prosecutor, in criminal cases, which is what we're predominantly interested in, files a charge, we get the documents either late the same day or the next day. And so we don't, you know, we're certainly not behind on that. And that's just something that, I mean, people expect that now. If I write a story, I mean, the people in the comments are going to jump all over me. If they're like, why is this being reported a week after it happened? You know, they won't like that. They want it now. And we have a kind of an expectation that we'll give it to them as soon as we find out about it. So does that answer your
Yeah. Does anybody else have questions? I mean, I keep going forever. You guys have questions?
Yeah.
So when you're responding to some of the comments,
Yeah.
like if you get, do you ever have to delete any of them because they're just like
Oh, yeah.
spam or, okay, I was
Yeah.
wondering that, because I've run into that with like stories I've done where you like start getting like some religious nut that's like going off on some spiel, like I'll get like a 2-paragraph thing, and I'm like,
Right.
and I know in journalism you're not, you know, you're supposed to take a neutral stance
Right.
and let an argument go, but when it gets to a point where it looks like
Right.
it's going off in some weird off direction, and I'm like, I'm just gonna delete that one.
I don't blame you. Yeah,
But-
comments are really tricky.
Okay, yeah.
You know, it's we have a comments policy, so you kind of have to adhere to the rules on there. But I mean, you know, obviously, slander, libel.
Okay, yeah.
It's a no-brainer. We're going to take that down. It's just not okay to say some of the things that people do say about other people, and even off-topic comments. We can sort of steer people back on, or we can remove those. But it's hard, and yeah, you do want to honor that okay, it's you're entitled to your opinion, but within the bounds of good taste. I think is what we sort of aim for, is that okay, you know, and there are obviously those people too that clearly have an axe to grind on certain issues.
Yeah.
We had one of the biggest things was the prosecutor's race a couple years ago. You probably heard about the prosecutor's office right before the re-election. They sued the Kitsap County Rifle and Revolver Club. It's been long-standing litigation. So a lot of people were very angry about that and took out their anger on the incumbent prosecutor. And we had to toe the line between, this person is an elected official, so they're going to have to take criticism, but there is also a line that you have to draw, and boy, it was just going back and forth, and it can be pretty irritating sometimes. People can be I'm surprised at how harsh.
Yeah.
And just with the axes to grind that are out there. But at the same time, you want to allow people to express their opinions, and I've been pleasantly surprised that sometimes there are very thoughtful comments, and on top of everything else, I just think it can also make us better. I mean, like I was saying before, if I put a story up and I'm a week late on that story, or what was the example that just came up the other day? There was a code 911 item that ran about this guy who the Mesa County Sheriff's Office thinks pistol whipped his girlfriend and then took off into the woods, and he hasn't been found yet. Well, when I talked to the Mesa County Sheriff's Office, I said, do you want us to put anything in there to say, a description on the suspect or anything like that, so if people have tips they can call and help? No, we don't want any of that. We feel confident we're going to get them. What's funny about that is that if we don't do that now, and I never knew that was there will be 5 comments instantly on the story, and there still were yesterday, even when all these people criticizing the sheriff's office saying, oh, well, they're so confident they have them, as if these people are, driving around and they've, I'm going to print the mugshot out and go look for myself. But, I mean, these people, they expect that and they want that, and so if that's their expectation, it's our job to deliver that. That's been a very consistent one, and I will literally go through my reporting when I'm interviewing a source on a story, and think to myself, okay, well, what's the first commenter going to say? What are they going to say this story's missing? And
first comment.
Exactly.
First comment.
Yeah. I mean, but they will, and they are, and that's that's another benefit that's going to come out of that. So another thing with comments that we've been doing that kind of goes back to the idea of, sort of updating your story in real time. I've found real success with, you guys heard of live blogging? I mean, that is, if you can find, it's real tricky to find avenues where it works, but one place it does really work well in is the court system, because there are just people who are at home, and if they could watch a murder trial as it was happening, I can't get a camera in there yet, and we're not live streaming trials. I'm thinking that we're getting there. I mean, it's just a matter of time that before even newspapers, I'm not talking obviously about, what is it, Court TV, something else now, or whatever they are.
Or something like that.
Right,
True TV.
True TV. Yeah, True TV. There we go. But live blogging is a great way to engage people if you're covering something in real time. Our sports reporters are doing it with some sporting events now. People seem to like that. It allows people to comment too in real time, to ask, what's going on in court? What are you seeing from the defendant's mannerisms? Or and we've had some high-profile trials, including the young woman who was riding in the truck with the guy who killed the trooper. And that was the first time where, I'd been doing live blogs quite a bit, but this was the first time where, just lots of comments, to the point where people just wanted to say their opinion, and I had to say, look, this is a live blog, if you have an opinion, go to the homepage, you can put how you feel about the case. I had to limit it to, if you have a question about what's going on in court, or you have a comment about what's happening right now with this particular witness, because it all of a sudden blew up. And so that's another, and live blogging is, just as I was mentioning before, a really great way to have your thoughts organized. I used to go into court on a story and taking all these notes, and then you get back again and you have all this material that's not organized. Well, with a live blog, you're pretty much streaming, what's going on. So even though I'm exhausted at the end of the day because my ADD brain is having to focus for, basically 8 hours sitting there in court, the whole transcript is right in front of me. I can take from any part of it. I can start to process, okay, this was probably the biggest deal that came out of it. I've got direct quotes already in there. And so again, that discipline with people wanting minute-by-minute access can feel really overwhelming, but if you stick to it through the process, at the end of the day, everything's pretty well organized for you, and it makes writing the daily version a lot easier. So, yeah.
Do you think, with the immediacy of social networking and social media, what's your policy on breaking news? Like, will you break something via Twitter or Facebook, or will you wait till you're writing it or you have written it? Like,
That's a good question.
and does the Sun have a policy on that, or?
I wouldn't say there's anything written at this point that we have as far as a policy. We, at this point, I mean, if it's big enough and people are talking about it on Twitter, we'll probably post something. Personally, I like to have a link up there on Twitter. Rare times, I just try to put something up immediately. But a link, I think, is so much more valuable for people and more valuable for us, because if they see it in a one-off sentence about, oh, okay, maybe they won't check for it later or something. But if you put that link right there and then, so you have just a little bit of information, you're driving people into your website, on Facebook too, and you're giving them more information than you can, certainly for Twitter, and in 140 characters, you're giving them, you're giving them a little more depth. So I personally prefer, and I think we prefer, to have at least a little something more than just a sentence about what's going on, unless it's just absolutely huge, unless it's something that's, I'm trying to think of some examples of when we've put things just straight on. Earthquakes would be, something. Natural disasters would probably, we'd be going straight on. So most of the time, though, the link is good. I think the link, it gets you thinking about the fact that you can't just write, oh, I heard there's shots fired on the scanner. That's one of my pet peeves. You see it on the, like Cairo, King, and Como, and Q13. They just, the instant they get something, they put it up on Twitter without knowing much about it. And I think that there are people that probably like that, but if you think about what we're trying to do and how important accuracy is to our business, it's probably better to know a little bit more of what you have, unless it's just extraordinary, it's just a huge thing. I think it's better to have just a tad bit more. I like to be first, don't get me wrong. I want to be first. I mean, we're competitive, but you want to make sure I'd rather be right than be first. I guess is a simple way to put it.
That's a good way.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
So you're gonna deal with a lot of people who, like, are pretty tough to talk to.
Sure.
Like, I've done that too. I mean, even with, obviously, like, justice system is, like, much worse than sports, but it's sports, and, like, after you lose a game, it's like, man, I don't want to have to go talk to them.
Right.
But so what's, like, your approach to go talk to somebody who really doesn't want to talk to you?
Right. Yeah.
But you want to get the quote from them? Like, what's your approach for that?
Yeah. I think you just have to really level with people. I'm trying to think of some examples. I think that would probably be a better way to approach it. Yeah, you gotta kind of develop a formula for knowing that you're going to be dealing with. It was I covered sports, so sometimes you can find the silver lining in things. You might want to just start with that, something that went well, and sort of joke with them a little bit at first. In the criminal justice system, it can be just like, there are just people who are not going to talk to you.
Yeah.
But I'll give you an example that is going to be a story in tomorrow's paper. I got a tip that there's a woman who's been charged with, she was grooming dogs, and this was really a kind of a business for her, and the animal control, at least, or animal rescue, however you want to call it, the people from the Humane Society did an investigation that found that they alleged that she hit the dog with a brush, and she just was frustrated, or something like that. We don't really know why, but it killed this terrier, and that's like it's a sad story, and it's one that people will want to know about, and are on top of that. We wouldn't write it unless I called our prosecutor's office, and they said, yeah, we're going to charge this woman with first-degree animal cruelty. That would be a felony conviction, and so just like, whoa, what, that's a crazy story. Oftentimes, we won't be able to, like on the shooting, for instance. I'll go talk to this guy's attorney, but I don't have access to him. But there are crimes that we write about in the paper, or alleged crimes that we write about in the paper, in which the defendant is not jailed, and this is one of them. So if she doesn't have a lawyer, I want to reach out to this person. Now that's a pretty tough interview. I'm going to call on the phone and say, "Hi, I'm from the newspaper. You know, I hope you know that you've been, you know, you're going to be charged with this crime, and by the way, I'm going to write about it in print." You know, that's
Yeah.
wow. So that's a pretty tough interview right there. But the way I approach it is that I think it's important to have some compassion for the situation, and to lay it out in a way that is not, you're not trying to be aggressive with them. So the way I've done these in the past, I've had to talk with vehicular homicide suspects, like huge theft cases, things like that, where you're going into it and going, you know, boy, is this person just going to hang up on me? The success that I found is if you first tell them, you know, the reason I'm calling you is because I really don't want you to be blindsided, because I mean, essentially, when you get down to it, the story is that a government officer, so our prosecutor's office, has filed a charge in public court. So it's not like I can ignore that. It's a story that is going to be, you know, there's going to be wide interest in that, and it happened, and it's going to happen in a public venue, and it you know, a taxpayer-funded government official is charging this person with a crime, and a possible penalty may be jail time. I can't ignore that. So I present it to them that way, that, you know, I'm going to write this story, but I didn't want you to be blindsided by it in the paper, first and foremost. So if you're going to hang up on me, I understand. But secondly, all I have are these documents that accuse you of a crime, and I'd very much like to hear your side of the story. And so if you just got to try to level with people, I think. Another thing that I typically do a lot is I pretty much try to make it a point that if any family of someone who's died in a violent death, or a publicized death in the county, if they want to have a news obituary, so to speak, a tribute article in the paper, that's one, actually, I wouldn't say that I enjoy it, but it's one of the most satisfying parts of my job, because I don't want to, you know what these people are going through. If it's a father, a son, a sister, a brother, I mean, it's so, you're dealing with grieving people here. And so that's another thing that I try to do, is find someone in the outer circle of the family, or wherever, that is a nice avenue in that they can sort of, I guess, see the forest for the trees a bit. And you present it to them in a way that, you know, you can hang up on me right now, but I just want you to know if you would like this. And a lot of families, it's very cathartic for them. Some people don't. Some people, the way they grieve, and in fact, I probably would be that way. I don't want to talk about this. It's, and you respect that. You just have to respect that. But there are people who would say, gosh, you know, it would be really nice to have an article in the paper. And, you know, outside of the family, there's this huge public interest in it, in a car crash victim, or whatever the case may be. You know, the last, I'm trying to think of one that I've written. We had a tree climber last year who fell to his death, and his family was, I mean, sometimes you never know what you're going to get. So if that in some way answers your question, I just think you have to try to see eye to eye with someone, and you use whatever technique, whatever question you think might put you on the level with them, and try to be as extremely empathetic to whatever their plight is, whether it's losing a game or losing a loved one. You kind of go into it that way. One of my favorite stories that I've ever written, but one of the scariest kind of phone calls I made was this couple who they ran their obituary together. It was an older couple, but you're thinking, God, was this like a murder-suicide, or what happened? What's the story here? The article just says they both died on the same day. What's that about? And I called up the family and I said, you know, I don't want to intrude. I'd just like to know, you know, if you think that there is a chance to write about your parents. It was the daughter. And she goes, oh yeah, we would absolutely love that. And before you knew it, I mean, I'd come into work that day, called them probably within an hour of getting there, and I was driving out to Kingston that afternoon. The whole family was sitting around, and just like we are now, And I come to find out that, I mean, it's just an incredible story. These people were like the ultimate couple. They had been married 60 years. They were, it still gives me goosebumps. They went out and checked the mail together. They got up every morning. They had their little checklist. So I did this thing about their kind of their whole life. But what had happened was she had expected to die long before him, and he ended up getting an illness, and he died. But I'm trying to remember which one actually went first now that I think about it. But in any case, they died within 6 hours of each other, and one of them died, and the other, I mean, the family went in and basically told him, yeah, he's passed, and she, I think it was the mom that was still alive, and she said, well, you know, she said like some really interesting stuff about life, and that, okay, well, he's gone, and I'm gonna go too, and within 6 hours they walked back in the room and she's dead too. So it's an incredibly powerful story about how they loved each other so much that literally she just wasn't going to go on living after that. And yeah, so I guess my point to that is if you always have to ask the question, sometimes no matter how uncomfortable it can be, and you just try to be polite, and again with sympathies and with empathy to who you're interviewing, and sometimes you get really surprised. You know, at worst they say thanks but no thanks, and at best though you get like some pretty incredible stories. So.
So I think we've already taken about an hour of your time.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right.
If anyone's got questions.
Yeah. I want to ask.
In regards to the comment or the question you asked about comments, does the Kitsap Sun, the online edition, allow anonymous comments?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, you have a username, and that's something that we've really struggled with because you see it. I mean, look at when you're driving around. Imagine if you were walking down the street and you passed somebody and maybe you clipped them, you know, or something. You go, oh, sorry about that, I didn't mean to. But man alive, if somebody cuts you off on the road, you know, there's middle fingers, screaming, road rage, and all this stuff. I kind of view it as the same kind of thing with comments. I mean, when you're driving a car, you're this anonymous person that, you know, you might not know who you're running into. And when you're allowed to comment that way, I think in some ways maybe it's liberating. It allows a person to be able to say what they want without fear of, you know, just basically being able to say their opinion without having to put their name behind it. But in another, man, you know, that allows a lot of leeway. The trick of it is getting around that. You know, what are the alternatives? We've seen Facebook.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Some newspapers make it so the only way you can comment is if you log in through your Facebook.
Right. But what would be a really easy way to get around that?
Make fake Facebook.
Yeah.
Create a fake
Jack
Facebook.
Tumbleweed.
Jack Tumbleweed.
Yeah.
He's got a fake Facebook.
Okay, well there you go. Yeah, and I can tell you a lot of law enforcement around here has fake Facebook, and there's lots of fake Facebook pages. It's real easy to do. So
Sounds like a new website. Sign up for fake Facebook.
Facebook, yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think that's part of the challenge is that we got to find a way to. There's been some talk about, particularly with, I think what you're going to see is newspapers are going to try to find, like the New York Times has, more ways to establish paywalls. You know, something to pay for content, not for huge stories, not for national content, because it's so available. Why would someone ever pay for a story, you know, a national story, quite honestly. But for local content that you can't get anywhere else, maybe I think you'll start to see some more experimentation with that. And that's where some people say you have to put like a credit card in, you know, just that would be private. That would verify your identity. You are who you say you are. But yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I'm surprised in all these years that letters to the editor, you know, that more people don't just write in. I'm sure it's happened lots of times. I mean, how newspapers just, I don't think, try that hard to verify who a person is. But somehow, I mean, we just don't run letters that are you know, pretty egregious and out there. Whereas on comments, it can be 3 in the morning and this person decides to comment and nobody's watching the website, and you know, until it gets flagged or one of us puts our eyes on it and goes, well, God, that's coming down. You know, there's just some yeah, it's amazing what some people put up. But again, like I said before, it's sort of a blessing and a curse. So yeah.
So, Do you have any, parting advice for us?
Yeah.
Any
Parting advice.
big wisdom, little wisdom?
Yeah, I would say, you probably get told way too often that it's just gloom and doom out there. What the hell are you doing in here? That sort of thing. But the fact of the matter is that people, even where we are right now with declining circulation, you can always find a positive. With that declining circulation, we're seeing the web numbers break records every year. More and more people going online. Sort of like we call it a bit of a, like if the print product is this, fabulous old frigate ship that's sinking, and when here's the web over here, it's this life raft, and everybody's jumping on that, and we have to adapt and change. So if you feel like, I don't know, that I romanticize about the old days when it was, it would be fun to work in that era, but we don't. But if you're willing, like I said, to carry with you, a camera whenever you see something happen. If you have just a curiosity that is, unextinguishable. You want to go out there. You want to find good stories, and you're willing to work on all platforms, all social medias, with cameras, with video cameras, and of course the written word. There's always going to be a place for you because people want to know what's going on in their communities. That's the be all and end all of it. So if you have a passion for this business, I guarantee you will find a job. It's the people that are wishy-washy and maybe haven't. We've seen just a tremendous turnover in journalism since I've been in it. I mean, the last 10 years has been crazy. Even when I got to the Sun, we had almost 50 newsroom employees, and we have 20 now. But all those 20 people, they want to be here, and they want to be in that newsroom, and they all are willing to take a video camera out. Or, like I said, that's another benefit of my iPhone is I filmed the shorty that I did on the shooting yesterday on my iPhone. The quality on this thing is incredible. I mean, why can't you do that? It's not as good as that. It's going to be sound quality. Yeah, you're going to have obstacles if you're on the side of a highway and traffic is screaming by. But the be-all and end-all of it is if you're willing to try and experiment and you just have a passion for telling the community what's going on, there's always going to be jobs. A couple years ago, a story at the Kitsap Credit Union ATM down on Washington. Basically what happened was this woman, for whatever reason, deposited a bag of methamphetamine into her bank account. Where you normally deposit a check or whatever, and you're kind of going, what the heck? Right. I mean, why would this be a good idea? You think that they'll store it for her or something. I don't know.
Deposit box.
I don't know. Yeah, put it in there, please. But that one, I actually was watching Conan. I think this was back when he was on NBC, and Conan O'Brien did a joke about it. And so that's pretty much my one claim to fame is I've had a Code 911 item from the Kitsap Sun appear on Conan O'Brien. So.